sort of saying, yes, I am interested in this thing in advance of this thing existing. And you know, I think that that's not invaluable. I think that that has, you know,
just being the yin and the yang. You know what I'm saying?
I understand.
You know, it's like a good song, or you know, a good song or a good story. I think there's validity, a lot of validity to it. And I've seen some people raise an extraordinary amount of money through Kickstarter. But I think it all comes down to the authenticity of the story and what it is that you're presenting.
And how often you do it too. If you're doing a Kickstarter every other month, then people are like.
I think, like Opus said, if you go out there begging and pleading, that's not a good approach.
Yeah.
If it's I just had a friend of mine do it, and he had a bucket list dream that he wanted to record an album that consisted of all the musicians that he loved growing up back in the 70s. The musicians who played like on James Taylor records and Jackson Browne albums and stuff like that. He also wanted to record it at a specific studio where classic albums were made. He outlined this. It was a real bucket list kind of dream album. And people loved the story. It was very compelling, and it was very authentic, and it was something that they could associate with.
Buy-in.
Get involved.
Yeah, it was very, they wanted to buy in because they were sharing the emotion with him that, hey, that's pretty cool. Yeah, here's my, I'm in. And so again, authenticity, compelling, creative, that'll work. Begging and pleading, maybe not so much.
Now look at the Wrecking Crew thing. I don't know if you've been following this. Wrecking Crew is just a wonderful movie that has, I mean, it has been now, I don't know, it's close to a decade at least in the making. But it's finally come to fruition after a lot of support. And I mean, largely the money was raised for licensing because the Wrecking Crew, I don't know if you're aware of this, essentially were involved in every recording ever made in LA, essentially. You know, I mean, whether it was the Beach Boys and Paul Revere, the Raiders, or Sinatra, or whomever, the Wrecking Crew were involved. And this movie is brilliant. But it's been years and years in the process and hundreds of thousands of dollars necessary to license the music. And finally, it's been bought by Magnolia Films, will be out in 6 months or so. It's a success story, but it was like pulling teeth repeatedly. And you know, I'm still waiting for my copy, but it's coming, I think.
At this point, in the hour, I would like to get some feedback from you guys because I'm sure that you came all this way to learn something, and you have to have a question in your mind that you want to ask us. So please go ahead. If you just want to just come up to the microphone.
There's also Indiegogo, which doesn't Kickstarter. You have to, just so you know, you have to
reach your goal.
Yeah, reach your goal. Indiegogo, you could take the money and run.
And well, you know, there are pluses and minuses to both of those. I mean, obviously, if you don't meet your goal on Kickstarter, then you get nothing.
You get no money.
But the flip side is that increases. The reason they did that is because it increases the idea for the fan who's chipping in that something will actually come of this, you know, joint financial venture, right? So that it's not like, okay, if you need $5 grand but you only get 3, then I will put my money into this thing, and then you'll never be able to accomplish what the task was, making a record or whatever. So, you know, I don't know, I can see it both ways. Come on, somebody's gonna have a
We'll
question.
babble forever unless you ask a question.
All right, I have.
Not Paula.
Is that mic working?
It is. What is all your thoughts about online services such as Pandora and things of that nature, as far as promoting yourself as an artist?
Speaking for Taylor Swift, I'd like to say that all of my music off.
Spotify sucks.
I mean, I'm ecstatic to have all my albums on all that stuff. I mean, again, it's a yin and a yang. Like some people, I mean, do you want it out there for free? Do you not want it out there for free? I'm happy to have it on Pandora and all these other things. So
I think there's a major difference between Pandora and these sort of radio-oriented things versus Spotify. Those services, I mean, when you go to Pandora, you say, I want to listen to something that sounds like, I don't know, Gene Simmons or something. Just to pick on him again. But you know, the point is that because of the way those services work, they play you one Kiss song, and then they play you 5 or 10 more songs that sort of in their mind are like Kiss, and then eventually,
thanks to the other,
they're not Kiss songs, and then. Well, and they may not be that like it either, that's another matter. But the point is that under those circumstances, they have to pick other bands to play you, and if your band is in their catalog and God forbid, properly tagged, you may very well get played,
Right.
and therefore somebody listening who's likely to like you because you're like Kiss, then they're going to potentially discover you. On the other hand, Spotify only really works like you go and you say, I want to listen to Kiss, and suddenly you've got Kiss, right? And so there's really no discovery involved in that unless you go into their sort of radio function and just kind of listen. And in that sense it may work, but the whole idea of like, I'm going to put my stuff out there for free because somebody's going to discover me and then buy my record or something. At least Spotify doesn't really hit that nail on the head.
The larger issue is equity.
Forget it.
It's the disproportionate equity. You can get millions of these streams and so forth, and if you've ever seen these checks that come from like 3 million streams, it's like 0.8 cents or something.
Processing the check certainly
Yeah.
took more than the actual check was.
And the people who are benefiting
Costs
mostly,
more to
and they're buying into ownership now, they are acquiring a greater equity in these companies, are the major record labels. So they're the labels are becoming the beneficiary of these services. They just bought into Sound Exchange, I think, this week. So they're gonna acquire, Warner's is in, and I'm sure the other labels will follow. And SoundCloud, right? Sound Exchange is a good thing. Sound Exchange has money they want to give you. But SoundCloud and Pandora and some of the other companies are, you remember YouTube, you're doing all the work. And unless you set your site up, your page as a business model, a partnership, you're generating millions of views for them so that they can generate advertising revenue. They're getting paid, you're not. So you have to approach it from a business standpoint, look into the business structure and how you can partner.
And I think that's difficult for musicians because typically musicians don't have a really strong, except for Gene Simmons, a really strong, business gene. That's why utilizing folks who do have that as a part of their makeup is essential. Finding a good, honest person becomes problematic.
That's very cliche, but it is the music business.
If you get like a sponsor or whatnot, and to touch on what you were saying, I think it'd be great if you do have your YouTube page set up and you're streaming it, you could technically go after a sponsorship and they can advertise on your stream that you have already thousands of people. It's just another idea of avenue of making money for yourself and putting it back into your
It just becomes a chicken and egg thing. It's like if you've got nobody looking at your thing, you're not going to get sponsors, and if you're not going to
Catch-22.
Yeah.
We have a lot of
Yep. Let's hear from the